What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I wanted to bring to you a discussion about dangers, because dangers have been a flashpoint of contention, honestly, since the second set of their release, when we started to get a lot more of their powerful cards. And a lot of people have been crying out for dangers to get flat out banned just because the engine is so generic, it enables so much just degenerate bullshit, and honestly, I could see the reasoning behind that. But today I want to play devil's advocate and actually vouch for the side that I think dangers are actually beneficial for the game, and I'm going to go ahead and explain my reasoning as to why I believe that. So before we get into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss a single upload. And if you really love the content that I produce on this channel, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because it's thanks to people like Triet that I'm able to bring you this content on a daily basis. So if you're interested, hit the join button down below or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and defend the argument that dangers are in fact beneficial for the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now I know you might be thinking, Cimo, there's no way that you could justify dangers being in any way, shape, or form okay. I'm gonna go ahead and challenge that notion, because there's actually been a lot of really good things that have come from dangers entering the game. Now, obviously, if you take an entire archetype that's basically upstart goblins on legs, that already sounds inherently unfair. But if you have to think about it, when you look at some of the decks and strategies that have actually emerged as a result of the dangers becoming essentially a part of the metagame, it actually starts to shift your perspective a little bit. So let's start off with something simple like Burning Abyss. Now, Burning Abyss has been in the metagame ever since Dante's been released, and obviously the deck has gone through several different hits, but the deck hasn't really gone anywhere. Hell, we saw Burning Abyss at our nationals during the past year, 2018, and that was before dangers were even released. And then once we got dangers, it kind of just allowed Burning Abyss to take on an entirely new form, because when you have cards like Danger Jackalope and Danger Tsuchinoko, which are also level 3, so it just happens to synergize with the rest of the archetype, giving you additional extenders. And then when you've got stuff like Nessie, which isn't a level 3, but basically allows you to search those, it just kind of helps reinvent and just reshape the archetype in general and allow you to do a lot of really cool things. Now, yes, you were usually making the dangers to make something like Curious to dump your snow, but that made Burning Abyss a very strong, viable archetype, especially backed by other cards like Orbital Hydrolander, because snow is able to fix the graveyard, making a card like Hydrolander a lot more consistent. So being able to easily access snow and have access to just being able to shape your plays in a much more consistent and frequent way, I think is actually a really good thing. It gives players more control over how their deck functions, and at the very least, the cards are just level 3, just extenders that are going to allow you to either climb into link plays, or at the very least, just end on a Dante, which might then result in a Beatrice, which isn't really too bad. So having Burning Abyss, again, reinvent itself, and yeah, maybe some people are sick of Burning Abyss, but I think allowing Burning Abyss to compete in the 2018-2019 format is still really, really cool. And we kind of have dangers to thank for that to a minor extent. But let's look at another example. Take a look at a deck like Danger Orcus. Danger Orcus pretty much debuted all the way back in YCS Chicago, at least on the main stage. And this is a deck that is able to do so many incredibly powerful things. I mean, yes, it's able to do something minorly degenerate by summoning something like an Elder Entity Azathoth on your first turn if your opponent happens to make you go first, but most of the time you're blinding second, and you're gonna be just OTKing your opponent by breaking apart their board and summoning Borrelsword Dragon for the OTK. And yes, while the dangers are a very strong component of this, without the dangers, I don't think Orcus would be able to even nearly compete to this level at the current point in time. We see in the OCG that Orcus is actually a very popular strategy, but they are a set or two ahead of us, and they have some support cards that we do not have yet here in the TCG. So that just goes to show that dangers are able to help bolster an archetype like Orcus, which isn't even at full power yet, and is able to capitalize on the fact that it can just play all these different cards that are just act as pseudo extenders to be able to make Borrelsword Dragon, break the opponent's board, and kill the opponent in one fell swoop. I just think that's really cool, because without the dangers, a deck like this would have never existed, and it's not like the deck is completely unfair. I mean, you have to think, you're blinding second, which is dangerous enough in itself, no pun intended, because there's so many different decks that want to go first, because because they're able to amass such an incredibly powerful board if they do, that you could make a very grave miscalculation if you plan to blind second in the incorrect format. But that kind of leads us into the next deck, Danger Thunder Dragon. Thunder Dragon has always been at the top tables ever since its release, but it slowly started to fall out of viability as the meta began to progress. Then you throw the dangers into the mix, and yeah, Fairy Tail Snow did help this to a marginal extent, but Danger Thunder Dragon is really what reinvented and kind of was like the resurgence of Thunder Dragon, because it gave the deck the added consistency and power that it needed to be able to perform up against the top decks of the meta. And without that, I don't think Thunder Dragon would be nearly as popular as it is now. Now, is Danger Thunder Dragon a healthy deck? That's still up for debate. I mean, it does a couple degenerate things, but it's by no means unbeatable. I mean, I think it has yet to win a single premier event outside of, I believe, a UDS, which is a premier event, I should say, but compared to like when you look at all the YCSs, it has yet to win a single one. So that just goes to show that even with the power that the Dangers have in a deck like this, it still doesn't mean that everything is just set in stone. So there's so much potential for an engine like this to be able to just bolster these other archetypes, whether they're like some of the strongest archetypes in the game or not. And I think that's really cool that we have the opportunity to see this, especially because it's something the OCG doesn't have the opportunity to have at the time, so we have to come up with these decks ourselves. Same thing goes for decks like, you know, look at Danger Lunalight. Honestly, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, it wasn't like a real Lunalight deck that won YCS Chicago because it played Danger cards. I think that's completely and utterly bullshit, because you have the fact that, first of all, there were more Lunalight cards in the deck than Danger cards, but second off, wouldn't you rather have your deck actually have the potential to see competitive play if you play this insanely generic archetype in it to help give it the boost it needs to compete at a competitive level? I think that is incredible that there is such an engine of cards that can be played that allows a deck like Lunalights to be able to not only top a premier event, but end up winning that premier event as well. So I think that's just very negative thinking, that you think that, oh, just because you're playing Dangers, it doesn't really stay true to the archetype. That's just completely and utterly irrational. Another deck too, take a look at like Danger Dark Warrior. Dark Warrior was a deck that was actually falling out of favor, and then people discovered they could put Dangers in the deck, and it actually kind of re-bolstered the consistency because that deck has taken so many hits, especially on the last Forbidden and Limited list. And yeah, the deck isn't like the best deck of the format, it's probably like tier 2 at best, but because of cards like Rusty Bardage and other things, you're still able to assemble some incredibly powerful boards, make Azathoth turn 1, and just go in and OTK your opponent on the following turn just because you have so many powerful extenders. Hell, Dangers even made a deck like Blue Eyes able to top YCS Dusseldorf, one of the largest YCSs of all time. And again, just because it wasn't playing purely Blue Eyes cards doesn't take away from the fact that it wasn't a Blue Eyes deck. I mean, being able to take advantage of the fact that a lot of these Danger cards are level 8 to synergize and go into stuff like Dark Matter, that is so cool that we have the opportunity to do something like that, and it gives a deck like Blue Eyes the chance to compete where it otherwise would have no chance to compete in this current format. And take another lower tier deck like Spiral. I mean, Spiral was always able to compete with Dangers because you could go into some crazy plays with Galaxy Tomahawk thanks to the fact that Nessie and Dogman were level 7 in tandem with Spiral Master Plan. But even when Galaxy Tomahawk got banned, Spiral was still able to compete because the discard effects actually help fix your hand. You get more cards on the field to help you break your opponent's board, which is what Spiral does best, going second. But even beyond that, you can discard cards like your Spiral Mission Rescue, which act as a Monster Reborn, basically mitigating the entire loss of the Spiral, of the Danger card whatsoever. And so again, I don't think Spiral would be able to compete in this current format if it weren't for the Dangers. So this is just example after example after example that I've provided to you guys that allows so many different strategies that might not otherwise be able to compete, and that's all because of the Dangers. And yeah, I do want to touch on, you know, the worst parts of Dangers too, and that's the fact that they do enable a lot of degenerate bullshit. I mean, we've had what, like 4 or 5 separate FTKs that all revolve around around Dangers. We've had the Danger Dark World FTK, we've had the Slash Straw FTK, the Cyberstein FTK, the World FTK. I mean, it's just one after another, basically having you draw your whole deck, and then at some point you're going to do some sort of combination of cards that acts as your win condition before your opponent even gets a turn to draw a card. And I'm not advocating that that is a strategy that is healthy in any way, shape, or form, but what's interesting about that though is that when you take a look at the fact that they've addressed a few of these cards on the most recent Forbidden and Limited list, seeing stuff like Cannon Soldier get banned, seeing stuff like Slash Draw get banned, even though these aren't necessarily, you know, the problem cards, they kind of are to an extent, because now, you know, there's still Cyberstein running around, there is still the World running around, but realistically, that deck hasn't topped anywhere. I think the World FTK made day 2 at YCS Chicago, but these FTKs that a lot of people are worried about, they're not really anywhere to be found. A lot of people have taken note and they're playing Droll and Lockbird, not just solely because of the fact that the FTKs might be relevant, but because it's actually pretty good against Danger Thunder Dragon and any other Danger variant as well. So the meta kind of self-adjusted and checked itself in tandem with the fact that the ban list also provided kind of like a little safeguard by getting rid of the problematic combo pieces like Cannon Soldier, Slash Draw, etc., etc. So overall, Dangers are a very interesting point of discussion because yes, while they do enable some degenerate aspects of the game in terms of FTKs and stuff like the Azathoth combo, I think it's very interesting to look at it from the perspective of what Dangers have actually done for other decks by allowing them to compete in our current competitive format. Like, just think about what our format would look like if Dangers didn't exist. I mean, when you take out Danger Orchist and Danger Thunder Dragon and Danger Dark Warrior and Danger Burning Abyss and Danger Lunalight and all these other decks, what are we really left with? We would have what, like Salamangrate and Sky Striker, and yeah, maybe there'd be some pure Thunder Dragon, but the deck wouldn't be nearly as strong as it is now, which I guess is subjective in terms of whether or not that's a good or bad thing, but I think the diversity would actually go down because it wouldn't allow for these decks to be, I guess, enhanced by the creativity and the strength that the Danger engine pretty much offers in terms of having that raw draw power and giving you those extra extenders to be able to just feed off and just proliferate the amount of plays that any deck is capable of doing. Now, I'm not trying to advocate for the fact that Dangers are completely healthy or the fact that they might not need to be checked in the future in some way, shape, or form, but I think it's just interesting to take a step back and look at what Dangers have done to benefit the game rather than the bad things that have come as a result of it, because a lot of the bad things have gotten fixed, and honestly, these were problematic cards that probably should have been hit on the ban list before anyway, so it's kind of just nice to appreciate what Dangers have done for the game, and so I just wanted to share those thoughts with you guys and see what you had to say as well. So guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video insightful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.